Welcome to the Coast Podcast. I'm Emilie, a virtual assistant agency owner who left Amazon in 2019 to build my dream.
And I'm Whitney, a freelance writer and communications consultant who never felt at home in a cube farm.
We didn't see many people paving their own ways like we decided to, so we created this podcast to talk to others who were brave enough to pick a different path. Creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing their careers and their lives their way.
Join us as we learn from them, get inspired, and show you beautiful paths less traveled.
Not every road leads to the coast, but the ones that do come with a great view. And welcome back to the Coast Podcast. My name's Emilie Given, and I own a virtual assistant agency right outside of Seattle, Washington.
And my name's Whitney Popa. I own a communications consultancy right outside of Seattle, too. We live about, 5-10 miles from each other. I haven't totally mapped it. And this podcast is a place where we get to interview other entrepreneurs, people who inspire us, who are doing cool businesses their way. And today we're talking with Stephena Anderson, owner and creator of Dancing Skunks. She will tell us all about the origin of the name because it's a very cute story. And she creates baby gear, baby clothes. She has a really cool history in military nursing and just all these awesome things that came together to spur her to create her company as it is right now. So thank you for being with us today, Stephena. We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell us about Dancing Skunks. What is it?
So it came about through my journey of motherhood. When my oldest was a baby, we moved to New England. And as first-time parents, we were kind of shocked with all of the things we had to learn about a newborn in the cold weather. And I couldn't really find a safe way to keep him warm in his car seat. So I invented the Kakuna as a gap in the market that I had seen because my son hated his car seat. So like getting him strapped in the warm house, going through the cold weather to the warm car, and then having to get him out as soon as possible when we got where we were going, but keeping him warm. There was just so many things I needed. And so I invented the Kakuna as a way to keep him warm without having to bring along blankets and having to struggle to put him in a warm bunting at the other end of our trip. And so I got a lot of feedback from parents asking like, where can I get that? And so that kind of is where it started.
So what is the Kakuna? I think Whitney knows. I don't know. What's the Kakuna?
Yeah, I have a Kakuna and I swear by it. Even now, our daughter's 2.5, and if we were to go on a walk, I would definitely put the Kakuna on her.
So it is, it's kind of like, it's hard to explain. It's kind of like a blanket bunting. It looks a little bit like a sleeping bag, but it's not for sleeping. You strap your baby into their car seat, stroller, baby carrier, hiking backpack, and then you put the Kakuna over them and you kind of tuck their feet in, and you can strap the Kakuna onto the device to keep it on so your baby can't kick it off. And it can go, like, my kids have used it in multiple brands of car seats and baby carriers and strollers. And it just grows with them from birth through toddlerhood. My 4-year-old still uses his. So
it's minky fabric too. It's super cozy. Yes. And makes them feel like they're in a little cocoon. That's why it's a Kakuna.
Yeah. And it has a bunch of different ways it can be configured to strap on to different devices so that it can really fit your device the best.
Super cool. Cool.
And you can also use it, I have it so you can zip it all the way up and just have your baby inside and they're completely wrapped up like you would if it was better than a blanket, so they can't like get their arms out and feet out. So
My major beef with blankets on strollers too. So our son was fine because he's so chill. Um, he was not kicking his blanket off very often. But with our daughter, we, in the town that we live in, we go on a ton of walks. And any parent, like, I feel like any parent anywhere, you have to get out of the house with these young kids because you're just going to go nuts if you don't. So I feel like it applies to every parent. But with our daughter, she kicked blankets off almost half a dozen times every single time we were on a walk, no matter how long that walk was. So the Kakuna really saved us because it has these little straps that you kind of, at least for me, I not twirled is the right word, but I would wrap around the straps of the stroller, and then she would be secure in. And because it's kind of a reverse zip, you put it over them and then like zip up the back. So she's just secure in there. There's no way that she can kick it off. Everybody has a different use case, but for us, because we're walking all the time and I was so tired of picking up those blankets in the rainy sidewalk, and then you can't use the blanket anymore, then your kid is cold. It just completely saved my life. So I actually like did some work for Stephena, and then I was like, you know what, any payment she's going to give me, I'm just going to recycle back into her company and get myself a Kakuna because I know it's going to change my life. And then it did. So thank you for creating that.
oh, I'm so happy you love it.
Yeah, I try to put you on the G as much as I can whenever we're using it so that people really see what it is and how it can change their lives. What other types of products do you have?
So all of the products that I created, I have come from my motherhood journey. And so I had two sons that were very colicky and they spit up a lot. And so I was always just using a towel because burp cloths were not catching it. So I created some burp cloths that actually have a towel inside, but also have a unique shape to give the most coverage while still being comfortable for you to use and not bunching up on baby. And bibs also for that same reason, newborn size bibs, because my son always spit up down the gap in the one size fits all bibs. So I made some smaller ones.
Or like directly into your cleavage.
Right? Yeah. It's like, oh,
So
yeah,
gross.
never fun there. And I also recently created the skin to skin snuggle romper, which is made to extend skin to skin time. Because a lot of parents are taught about the initial golden hour skin to skin right after you have a baby, but it's really important to extend the skin to skin time as much as possible. But it's not always easy to do when they're already dressed in their onesies and you're just feeding them real quick. But the romper, it is a wrap style top, so you can open it and then they'd just be easy bare chest to your chest, whether you're bottle feeding or breastfeeding, and extend skin to skin time. But I'm also a super practical person and I like versatility in my products. So I made it a grow with me style so your baby can last longer in it, because I feel like kids outgrow their stuff so quickly. And I just want to make products that will help parents and make life a little easier for them. So.
I love that. And something that we recently worked on together was your project for NICU families. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think it's super important as a community member and a business owner to do things for your community whenever you can. And I found that especially right now, there are a lot of babies being born prematurely and babies needing NICU support after being born. And I wanted to do something to help those families, because oftentimes I've heard from a lot of them, they feel very isolated, they feel very alone and unseen. And I thought, well, with my sewing talent, I can use my fabric scraps to make cute little hats for preemies. And right now, due to the understandable COVID precautions with a lot of hospitals, I can't donate directly to the hospital. And so I have them up on my website that parents or caregivers or friends, if you know somebody who has a kid in the NICU, you can go get one and I will donate it directly to the family. I do a lot of sewing for my own kids, so it's not just fabric scraps from my business, but there's a ton of cute designs.
So I have a question. Do you hand sew everything, or like with a machine? You sew everything that you sell?
Yeah,
by yourself?
currently I do, yes. I
Wow,
sew everything.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun though. It brings me a lot of joy. I like to, as I'm making things, I think about who this kid is that's going to get it, and just, send a little positivity their way, that hopefully they have a beautiful long life. And yeah, I just feel it makes me help feel connected to other people, even if I don't know them. I just like to send something nice their way.
Some of the best products have come out of, like, I just keep thinking of Shark Tank, like I'm solving this problem that I had, and you've solved multiple problems that a lot of families face. And I just think that's so important. Like, a lot of us walk around like, oh, that's a problem. And then we search for the product and we don't have the wherewithal or the resources or the ability to be able to solve it. So that's really cool that you're out there being like, no, I'm solving this problem, and also sending love to these families along the way, and thinking about the whole ecosystem of it all. Because, in supporting these kids, you're supporting the moms and making everybody's lives a little bit more beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to do what I can for others. So.
Yeah. And so you, before this though, your background is super interesting. So you have military nursing background. I'm sure that plays into your current company, but you also had 4 kids. So which came first? Like the company came out of having your children, but were you like, wow, I'm not going to be able to still do nursing the way that I want to and raise my family? Or how did that progress to what it is today?
So I was an Army nurse for 5 years, and my oldest was born right before I got out of the military. And my last assignment in the Army, I was a mother baby nurse. So I got exposed to a lot of issues that come up with parenting before I was a parent. One of the things was car seat safety. So I was like huge on that when I had my oldest. So that's one reason, like with the Kakuna, I was like, I have to have it be something that's super safe to use in a car seat, because there are a lot of products on the market that really aren't supposed to be used on car seats. And so that is something that has really been a driving factor through all my products, is safety. Like, I have to make sure that people are comfortable using my products, knowing that they will be safe. And after I got out of the Army, when we moved to New England, I was a nurse for a year, and then we had some childcare issues. And so I decided to stay at home, finish my master's in nursing, and raise my kids. And then we moved to Washington, and I had another child and another child. And eventually childcare costs are kind of very expensive. So I chose to focus on my business and my kids right now.
I mean, 4 kids in daycare would be...
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There's no way.
$6,000 a month at least. Like, that's,
yeah.
In Washington, yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. It was too much. So figured this is a way I can contribute to the community at the same time. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to go back to the car seat mention that you have. So I know from some of the other clients that I've worked with, when it comes to kids stuff, there's a lot of certifications and safety things that you have to go through. What's the process for, like, if you're saying the Kakuna is safe for car seats, what does that mean to a parent? Like, what testing have you gone through to assure that?
That's a great question. So I have the way that the Kakuna is designed, it does not interfere in any way with the way you strap your kid in, because you strap your child into their car seat first as per the manufacturer's directions, and then this just goes over your kid. So it does not interfere in any way with the safety mechanisms in your car seat. Because when I lived in New England, I did see a lot of parents like putting their kids in those, puffy buntings or jackets or something. And if God forbid you get into a crash, those actually compress and create extra space for the baby to move, which is why it's unsafe to do that. And so when I was creating the Kakuna, I was like, I do not want anything that would interfere with the straps. And so the Kakuna does not in any way interfere with how you strap your child into any of the safety devices that you use it on.
That makes sense. Is it your best seller?
It's
your cornerstone product.
It is, yes. It's one of those things that I get a lot of feedback from parents whose kids are a little bit older who are like, I wish I had that, or they then turn around and buy it for their friends who are pregnant, and they're like, you need this. You don't know you need it until you use it, and then you're like, yes, I needed that.
So. Those are the best baby products, the ones that are like, you can put everything on your registry, but then something that comes from a mom who's been a mom before, they're like, I don't really need that, and then you're like, oh my God, me
too. Yeah. So I've been putting together baby baskets for people who are pregnant now, like knowing what I know with all of my favorite little things in it. And my husband's boss, his wife is pregnant. And so he told me the other day, and then just talking to you now, I was like, oh, I have to make sure I put the Kakuna in there and a couple of those newborn bibs too, just to make sure that they're set up for success. So it's kind of cool to create a community of moms who have been there, done that kind of. Mm-hmm. And because like you said, I didn't know. I want to talk a little bit about like motherhood generally, because especially you with 4 kids and not being able to really promote your products in person, given some of their like immunocompromised situations, it's really isolating, especially the first one, and especially you being in New England with probably not a ton of family, and creating this product that kind of supported you through that a little bit. But I found there's a lot of conversation in motherhood circles, or even amongst my friends, of like, you have the baby and you're so blissed out and it's like the best day of your life. That was not my experience. Like either time, like sure, maybe a little bit of bliss, but what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of conversation around like the beauty of motherhood. And I'm not saying that that's not there, but I think that we could stand to be a little bit more honest about how isolating and hard it was. It was so much harder than I thought it would be when I had my first child, and I felt like there were times, especially like right before my milk came in, when you're like super hormonal and crazy, that I felt duped kind of by the world. I felt like nobody told me that it would be infinity times harder. Like not only just like the birthing, the boobs, the feedback, the not knowing what kind of things to put on your registry. And since we already have an explicit warning, I was gonna say shit. And a lot of it is shit. Like you just have so much that comes at you all the time. And so I'm particularly passionate about your product because it helps women in a very real way, coming from somebody who has been there. And if you're comfortable speaking to it, I would love to know like when you became a mom, like Was it everything you expected? Did you have like a ton of exposure to kids before, so you knew? I mean, you can't know until you actually birth them out of your body. Like, but I know for me, I just felt like, why didn't any of my friends tell me this? Because I was one of the last to have kids amongst my friends from, Idaho, who are having kids at 22.
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, I was a mother baby nurse. So I was like, I got this. I got the first like 2-3 days down, but I'm in the hospital for that time. So it's like, I didn't need to have those 2-3 days down. It's after that I went home and I was constantly calling the nurses that worked there, the pediatricians I worked with. I was like, is this normal? Is this okay? Like, I give you the spiel, but there's such a wide range of what's normal. And they're like, this could be normal. It could not come in. I was very fortunate to be close with the people I worked with. And I gave birth at the hospital I worked at. So I knew everybody. That part was a little more like I was at home because I worked there so much. But yeah, afterwards, it was very confusing, very isolating. Our family is all from Washington State. So we lived on the East Coast when my son was born, and I had a great community around. Of a few of my friends had kids at that time. But every kid is so different. And my son, as a mother baby nurse, I helped people breastfeed. My son was not going to breastfeed. And I was like, I have to breastfeed him. I was so it was in my mind, I can't use formula. I have to breastfeed him. And he struggled really hard to latch. He bruised me, he bit me. And we fed him with a syringe. Like I pumped and we drop fed him with a syringe in the hospital, and for several days, because that's what our lactation consultant told me. And they were very against formula. And because I'd worked with them, I was like, no, I can't use formula. I really regret that. I wish I would have had more support that fed is best, even though working through it, wishing, I could have supplemented a little with formula, a little with a bottle even instead of syringe feeding him. It's hard when you don't have all of the support with all of these broad ranges of experience. So that one was like a really big, difficult thing. And he did not sleep through the night until he was over a year old. He was the worst sleeper. He wouldn't sleep unless he was held. And that one was hard because when he was 2.5 months old, we moved up to New England for my husband to go to school. So I had nobody I knew up there after that point. And so I was working full time. I was in the middle of my master's degree. My husband was getting his master's. And so we were crazy busy and exhausted and didn't have a lot of people there. We met some incredible people who eventually became our community, but right away it was super tough. So it can be so exhausting and isolating. And a lot of the people in our community up there hadn't had kids yet. So it was a little bit difficult at that time. But if you are feeling isolated, if you are feeling alone and worn down, I don't want to say it's normal, but you're not alone. Like there are people and communities that you can reach out to so that you can get some help. If you feel like maybe you are a little more depressed, like baby blues, anything, like talk to your provider. We really need to normalize not feeling okay as a mom. And even if your provider's like, you know what, it isn't postpartum depression, it's good to have them in the know of what's going on, because they might be able to give you resources. I wish I would have done that, gone to a different or more lactation consultants after I left the hospital. I never did that. And I wish I would have known about those resources. It probably would have helped me a lot.
Yeah, and that goes back to advocating, because they they don't know, like they have their own days and experiences that are going on, but they're not probably, unless they're really great. In my experience, even the great ones don't do a great job of following up. They don't follow up with you to check in, except for those weird little questionnaires you have at your 6-week appointment and then your kid's like 6-month appointment. And even then, our maternal health system isn't great, because you put one thing on that questionnaire and they send you to the psych ward. I mean, that's a little hyperbolic for me to say, but it has been the experience of a lot of people. And just to normalize the experience of, it feels isolating, reach out to people, ask for resources if you think that you really need a higher level of support. Even me, like, to get ahead of having our second child and how it was going to disrupt our life, I wanted to try to get a new therapist. And even scheduling with her, this was pre-COVID, she never had any availability, and I had no childcare. So, yeah. And she wouldn't do Zooms. So it was like, I'm trying to get ahead of like helping myself out and my family, and I can't. Like, thankfully now there are a lot more virtual resources, but I found like the conversation with women needs to change too, of like, this is normal. And then the doctor's not giving you a questionnaire that, like, if you say, oh, I've had some dark thoughts or whatever you put on there, then you're immediately like put on antidepressants or whatever. It's just, the motherhood experience, I think, would be easier from the onset if we were more open along the way with each other. It almost feels like, I don't want to scare you out of having kids or something. I don't know. But for me, I was like texting my friends, like, you bitches did not tell me that I would be like split in half and then have this alien that I had to figure out how to feed and care for, and that my husband could go back to work a week later, and then I would just be sitting here staring at the baby and trying to figure my life out, and then have feelings and my body and just so many things that
yeah,
it's hard because people don't tell you that you're going to be a whole new person too. You're giving birth to a whole new person, but you yourself are a whole new person.
Yeah, not to mention like the people who have crazy experiences like Emilie did, where, you know, she and her child almost died and were in the hospital for what, over a week?
Yeah, just a week. But it's just like,
just a week where I almost died.
Yeah, it's casual. But what people don't tell you, like, they don't tell you you're gonna have disgusting night sweats. Or, hey, y'all that are pregnant, you're gonna sweat your body weight out after you give birth to a baby. Your sheets will be soaked, and then 3 months later you will lose all your hair. Like, nobody told us that.
Nobody told me about the hair loss.
Why did nobody tell us?
My best friend did, thankfully.
Oh, so messed up though. Like, everyone's like, having a baby is great, and you're like, well, actually, the first time you poop is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I wouldn't be like telling people, oh, it's a completely negative experience, because it's obviously not. But there's just a level of like secrecy around it that I find frightening.
Yeah, I would say to anybody, like, make sure you find a provider that you are very comfortable with and that you jive with, because that is so important. I was fortunate enough to, like, on my first experience, I had a provider that I felt comfortable that she had my back. I knew she would take care of me and my baby, and that was awesome. But she was a doc. She was an MD. But with my other 3, I had midwives, and I loved it. And I will say that, you know, birth is a very mental game. So if you are not comfortable with your provider, your body knows that. And so if you're not comfortable in your surroundings, if you're not comfortable with what's going on, your body also reacts to that too. And so like I know with my third one, I was not super comfortable with the midwife because I had a mental block with her because I had had a miscarriage like the day after I saw her in an appointment. And so when she was the one in the room with me, because it was a group of midwives and she happened to be the one on call the day I had my son, my body stopped labor. And I know it was because mentally I was like, you have to stay in until the next person comes. Like I felt this terror. And it's not on her. That was not her fault. She didn't do anything wrong. It was just mentally I had associated it. And so it's really important that people know these things and recognize these things. There's some great resources out there. Make sure you're talking to also specialists and experts to get some good opinions on what you should do. Make sure you have an advocate there for you, because like in the moment when you're having in labor, you don't always know what's all going on around you. So it's great to have an advocate there as well.
Yeah. Will you speak to a little bit? I have my own story about switching to midwives, but I'd love to hear from you about why you chose midwives with your other kids. Was it just because you moved, or other reasons?
Well, I chose the MD the first time because I had worked with her and I worked with a ton of the providers there, and I knew she was great, but I had always kind of wanted midwives because I think in healthcare, especially when it comes to maternity care and birth, you don't necessarily need an OB. Some people do. Don't get me wrong. There are women who should be seeing an OB, but midwives are perfectly capable of taking care of almost all patients that aren't high risk or anything like that. They are very capable, and a lot of the times, personally, I am not huge on interventions. I am a minimalist. I like to do as little as possible as far as interventions go. And I feel like midwives their practice tends towards minimal intervention and only doing what is needed when it's needed. And I guess when I was having my oldest son, there was an older doctor in the room with my doctor, and he was like, oh, just do an episiotomy. And she was like, no. And this doctor was trying to do an episiotomy on me over her shoulder, and she literally elbowed him out of the way. And so like, to me, it was like, okay, I want to make sure I find providers that align with me. And I've done a lot of research into a lot of things nursing wise, and I knew that like I would prefer to tear naturally than get an episiotomy unless it was absolutely necessary. And so I basically interviewed providers, and I was like, what are your philosophies on this? And people need to know it is okay to ask these questions of your providers. It is okay to make sure that you are comfortable with the things that they would want to do. And so if you are out there trying to find a provider that you want to give birth with, I highly recommend you use your first appointment to basically interview them and make sure that they know what you want, how you feel. And if they completely don't align with that at all, get a second opinion. Second opinions are super important, I think, in all types of medical issues, but especially with birth, because if you go to an OB just because your mom went to an OB, or your friends went to these OBs, if you don't need to and you're not comfortable with that one, that's not the right doctor or provider for you. I definitely think checking out all options that you're comfortable with and that fit your medical situation is an important thing to consider.
Yeah. There are a couple misconceptions about midwives that I want to clear up that I actually had in my mind too. One is that they won't give you drugs. They absolutely will if you want them. So with my first child, I had the same team of midwives for both babies, and I switched to the team of midwives after having a bad experience with the original OB that I was paired with, who at my first appointment, when she weighed me, told me I gained 5 pounds. I asked her, is that normal? She said, well, most people are so sick in their first trimester that they lose weight, so just stay away from the carbs. And then as she was going under my pants to do the ultrasound, she was like, wow, your pants are really tight. And then continued making some weird comments along the way. And I, of course, was alone, which I shouldn't have been. I should have had my husband there. I have a lot of weird feelings around like female health stuff. I've had some weird interactions with doctors in the past, and you're in such a vulnerable position. Like usually you're just, here comes the speculum, or whatever. And so you're already vulnerable, and then you're not necessarily in the right brain space. So I'm extra sensitive, and it's okay to be extra sensitive when it comes to your body and somebody who's taking care of your body. So I just had all these weird feelings afterwards, and I walked out of that appointment I started crying. I was so upset. I didn't understand, like, why would she say these strange things to me? And now do I need to research if I'm like getting too fat to have my baby? And that's when I decided I'm not going to weigh myself or look at them when they weighed me, unless it was a problem. So I told them from that point forward, 5 years ago, I have not weighed myself because of that. And I get that, like, if I'm not obese, then, I have that privilege of being like, well, it's how I feel in my body. But that's a decision I made for myself at that appointment of like, I'm not going to be measured by this person's number. And then I called to change to a different doctor, and they asked me, what would you be interested in the midwife? So another misconception is that they're not covered by insurance. And if the place that you're working with has a team of midwives, or a lot of places, they are covered by insurance. They are providers within most networks. And then the last thing, that was really important to me was, even if I had liked my OB and I was paired with one that I went to every appointment and saw her, that's not a guarantee that she's going to be the one on call the day that you give birth. So you could very well be with one person all along, and then the day that you give birth, whoever is on call is somebody you've never met before. With the team of midwives, when I first started with them, they had 3, and then they expanded to 4 by the time I had my daughter. I had met every single one of them. They make it a point of that. They also give you twice as much time during your appointments, at least where I went, as the OBs do. So there were a lot of positives for me, and I was low risk, so that's also a factor. But to your point, it's just so important to ask those questions and advocate for yourself. And I hope that anybody hearing this who's pregnant or planning to be pregnant, that they know that midwives are an option for them if they want that. And for me, it was the most positive experience that it could have been, especially given that I had such a weird history in multiple different directions with all these OBGYNs along the way. And I think that as women, these conversations are really important to have so that we can just educate each other on, like, this is an option for you. I also want to go back to the formula conversation you were having. I know that, like, in Emilie's case, she was kind of forced to only do formula with her son, given, like, their circumstances and being separated for over a week. And with our daughter, she was an acrobat from even being in my belly. And I had a lot of ego around, because it went well as breastfeeding can go. The first time around, I had a lot of ego around stopping. Do you have any products, like, did that inspire any of your products? The whole milk switching situation. I know you mentioned the bibs, but, like, was he spitting up because he was on formula, or he just had colic?
We never really got an answer as to why either of the boys were very spitty. No, my oldest, he never had formula. He was only breastfed. I changed my diet completely. Like I took out all of the like acidic foods. I went dairy free, which was awful for me because I love cheese. And there's no good dairy free cheese substitute.
No.
So, but I tried it all and nothing worked. We really never got an answer. He just outgrew it eventually. But yeah, mostly the bibs and burp cloths are what I have around feeding for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that formula stuff because I had the same struggle. And I wouldn't have known if I hadn't talked to more people about it. And I had to go on my own path to make the decision to switch her over. And I suffered for like 10 months when I don't like saying shouldn't, but I wish I hadn't because it tortured me.
And one thing about the feeding, I wish I would have really understood and knew is that lactation consultants are not just there for breastfeeding. If you are formula feeding, they can help you find the right bottle, the right nipple, and the right formula for your baby. So they're an amazing resource for how to feed your baby the way that your baby needs to be fed. So if you are formula feeding for whatever reason, by choice, necessity, whatever, it is a great resource out there to have the lactation consultants. And if you're breastfeeding, if you're pumping, any of that, I didn't know until I had my fourth when I finally followed up with a lactation consultant after I left the hospital because my youngest had a tongue and lip tie. And so we went to the lactation consultant. I didn't know all the other 3 times I was using the wrong pumping shields, like the phalanges. She pointed me in the right direction for the right one, and it was amazing. It changed my pumping experience. So I highly recommend people looking into lactation consultants because especially if a pediatrician does refer you, it oftentimes is covered by insurance. So people should definitely look into that with your insurance companies.
I didn't know that about the formula suggestions too. That would have been life-changing.
Yeah. So a friend of mine that I worked with on the mother baby unit, she is now a lactation consultant. And so I've learned so much from just following her on social media that I didn't know. And I was like, man, why weren't you a lactation consultant when I had my kids? But yeah, I'm trying to help spread the word to other moms. Like these resources are out there and you don't have to struggle like I did. If you know
That's
about
so
it.
helpful. And we are, because we think this way, or at least Emily's like put this in my brain, I would love if you made like an ebook, that you could have on your site of like some of your tips and tricks from a former mother and baby nurse to go along with your products. I mean, it would be so helpful, or even like include as a brochure with things that you send, because I didn't know all that. And I spent a lot of time on Reddit when I was pregnant. It's a very helpful place for me. What advice do you have for people? Like, you made this decision to start your company kind of by force. A lot of us have that in common. But as you've been doing it for so many years now, what's your advice for people as they're getting started?
Well, I actually got started on my business like 7 years ago, and I got really nervous when I figured out that there was all these compliance rules that I didn't know about. And so I shut down because, like I said, I am huge on safety and I am a rule follower. So I was like, I got to make sure I'm up on all these rules. So first thing is check out your industry, see if there are what the regulations might be. And there are a ton of groups out there and experts out there to give you free advice on how to get started, to make sure, especially if you're going to make something for babies, and kids, there are regulations behind that, but there are a lot of awesome resources out there. so that I just got so anxious about it. I was like, it stalled me for a while. So get the resources. Every state has a small business development center. So if you are thinking of starting a business or are struggling with any aspect, contact your local small business development center, and they can help you with a wide range of things to get your business going. Ours here in Washington is amazing. So highly recommend it for people getting ready to start a business in Washington for sure. And have faith in yourself. You clearly believe that you can make a difference in somebody's life to do something, and just keep on to that on the hard days. Just know that you're doing this to make something better for yourself, for other people, and keep with that feeling.
That's so helpful. And I didn't know about the small business resources thing. I know a lot of local chambers of commerce have good resources too. But that's such a great tip.
But I've never looked into it. So
they're amazing. And local librarians. Didn't know that they could help you, like look up regulations in your industry, or do different, if you need to do even if you're just going to do a resume for somebody else, if you're going to do a job posting, they are so amazing with research. Another great resource.
I love that. I love librarians. I love the library. My whole family's librarians, so you're speaking my language. The last question we have before our rapid fires is Dancing Skunks. We didn't get into the name.
I know. A lot of people are like, why did you choose that? Like I had mentioned, all of my products are based on my kids and my motherhood journey. And when I was trying to come up with a name for the business, I wanted it to reflect that. And one evening, we were having a pretty epic family dance party. And my kids were very fragrant. And so I just said, oh my gosh, my dancing skunks. And I just called them that night. And then was trying to come up with a name, and I was like, you know what? That actually really fits, because it's what I call my kids. And when you're a parent, my motherhood journey has been so much like, sometimes it's like a ballet and very classical and everything fits and flows. Sometimes it's like interpretive dance and I'm just making it up as I go, but it all ends up flowing together and working out. And sometimes it's a very fragrant journey, so it all just kind of fit together.
So cute. I love that.
Well, and your son is particularly fragrant.
Mine? Oh my god.
Yes.
So I got a text yesterday. I'm not kidding, Whitney. I didn't send you this, but his teacher texted me and she said, EJ comes up to me while playing and whispers in my ear, I farted during rest time. And guess what? Nobody could hear because it was so quiet. That's what she texted me. Okay. 5-year-old boys, man.
Yeah.
They're a lot. And also, yeah, very fragrant.
We're always asking, who tooted? And then they get really excited. Like, it's usually not our son, it's our daughter who's tootier. And she's like, I did. And then he's like, our son is like, Anka did. And she has no shame. But they both.
It was me.
Kids are just tooty. They own it. Yeah. And we try to encourage them to own it. Like all sorts of things. We don't encourage them to push too hard while they're tooting or like go out of their way to be stinky, but I think that's relatable for any parent. I love it.
Thanks.
And I think, yeah, it's helpful for people to know that too, because then they're like definitely going to be like, okay, I gotta buy from her. She gets it. We have some new rapid fires for 2022, just kicking the year off.
Okay.
So we try to make these rapid. There are 5 of them, but as you've noticed, I'm long-winded, so we'll see how rapid they go. What are you proudest of in your business right now?
I am proudest of the feedback I get from my customers when they say I've helped them, or like I've changed something for them in their journey, and that's huge.
Do you think you've shipped to every state? Like, do you keep track of that?
I am actually pretty regional, local right now, but I have shipped all over, so not quite every state.
That's so cool. I asked that because I saw somebody recently had a map up of like all the
Cool.
states that they've shipped to. Actually, a company that I've been talking to about getting on the podcast, they create postpartum kits for moms.
Oh, nice.
To really pretty, like, elevated ones. I had a friend who actually they went to school with and completely unrelated, who made my postpartum kit for the hospital. She was like very into making these for her friends of like, she was pro like adult diapers. So adult diapers, all the sprays, all the like fun stuff. And then they created a really elevated version of that as a company. And so it plays nicely with what you're doing too. And yeah, I saw that they had made a map of where they had shipped, and I was like, oh, that's a really cute idea. Tell us about a book you read or podcast you listened to recently that changed the way you're thinking about your life or your business.
Oh, goodness. I read a lot of like historical fiction books or like the recent book I read is about the opioid crisis. So it doesn't really translate into my business.
Are you talking about Dope Sick?
Oh, I love that. I've watched that, but no, the book I read or I'm reading, it's about the family and everything behind the whole opioid
crisis. The Sacklers?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm deep in it. Yeah.
I'll have to send you the book title. But one book that really sticks out is A Hope More Powerful Than the Sea. And it's just about refugees. I don't know, that book, it's just like the determination, the level of like what you have to do to stick together to get through something difficult, and how they've helped each other. It's amazing to see and like read about that. And it's just a beautiful reminder. I mean, it's not a beautiful situation that they're in, but it is a reminder that we just all need to come together and help each other when we can. And yeah, I don't know. I think about that book a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a straight line to like, oh, this made me change my business. It's just, I think we're all growing and becoming better people every day. And the things that we decide to consume can support that for sure. I'll check that book out because last year I read 52 books. My goal was 35.
Oh, wow.
And this year my goal is 50. We'll see. And I do that not for any like, oh, look at me reasons. It's to keep myself accountable because I do have so many things pulling me away from reading, like Real Housewives, Teen Mom, Bachelor, podcast, Dope Sick. So reading is where I get like very much in flow. And so I make a measurable goal around it every year, and it changes just based on the year before or my mood. But I'll make sure I add that to the list. What would your last meal be?
Oh, goodness. Depends on
I can't answer that question.
It depends on my mood when I'm answering. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Whenever I think about that, I think about the Green Mile. And I think it just speaks to like what kind of foods you're into. I couldn't answer that question very easily because I like so many things.
Yeah. I don't have one type of food I gravitate towards. I would love to say something like healthy to sound like that would be my favorite thing to eat all the time, but it's definitely wouldn't be. It would
the most gluttonous, like whatever you want. I think for me, at least back in high school when I first really got into eating ribs, I would have said like a full rack of ribs from Tony Roma's. That was my spot. But I would have a multi-course meal for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It would be like Hook where they had all the entire table. I would definitely have oysters. I would have like a cheese course. I would probably have some spaghetti, the most epic spaghetti ever. I don't know. I would have a whole smorgasbord. That's what I'd have.
Yeah.
Sushi, enchiladas.
I would definitely have a lot of dessert. That's for sure.
Totally. What's the best business purchase in the last 6 months for under $100 that you've made?
Let's see. Well, my husband got it for me. It was a label printer. I'd just been printing my labels on my regular printer, but now he got me a label printer.
I love that. I see those on
favorite.
TikTok and I'm like, ooh. And our last question, a couple of these are holdovers from, we'll call it our last season. What's lighting you up lately?
Honestly, my kids' optimism. They've been amazing and optimistic and just excited about the little things. And that has really gotten me just excited about the little things again.
That's such a cool answer. Yeah, I love that. Seeing it through their eyes and knowing that, like, you know, there are certain things that we're worried about for them that they don't even know or care about or get bothered by. So it's refreshing that way. Motherhood is not, it's not dark. It's hard at first. It's hard all the time, but it's also great. And especially learning from them and growing with them. So we appreciate you so much. Can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, I have a website, DancingSkunks.com. I'm also on Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram under Dancing Skunks.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We'll see you next week on the coast. This episode's music was provided by Sloan Best.
And editing provided by Kayla Shu.